Hello and welcome to this special edition of Taxing Subjects. I haven't done one of these Zooms for quite a while, but I'm coming to you today to talk about getting your books ready for tax time. And I'm going to be joined today by Erin Turco with EVT Consulting, who is one of my premier referral partners. We work closely together because I don't provide bookkeeping service and she doesn't provide tax services. So although we are both solo business owners, we collaborate and are able to help our clients with all of their tax and accounting needs. So thank you for joining me, Erin.
Hi, how are you?
Well, thank you for joining me today to talk about getting your books ready for tax time. I'm excited to have a conversation. But before we dive in, I thought you could just share just a little bit about yourself for anyone that might not know you, and maybe a little bit about your backstory, what got you into bookkeeping and why you're passionate about this.
Yeah, of course. My name's Erin Turco. I own EVT Consulting. I've got a team of two bookkeeping assistants and an admin. We provide full service bookkeeping and fractional CFO advisory services to business owners. I have been doing bookkeeping for about 10 years, maybe a little more. And I started working for a couple that together owned 7 businesses, maybe 8. And I handled the bookkeeping for all of those. So I really got to know different business types. They were all different entity types. So really learning the meat and potatoes of bookkeeping. And then in 2022, I had to go part-time with them for health reasons. And I just started bookkeeping on the side to fill the gaps of my income. And then referrals started coming in and things started growing. And about 2 years ago, I made this my full-time gig. And the beginning of 2026, I hired all of my employees and it's been a great time.
Nice. It's great to learn a little bit more about you. And for those of you who haven't worked with Erin yet, I work closely with her since my tax practice doesn't provide bookkeeping services and her bookkeeping practice doesn't provide tax services. So we can provide both of those services almost under one roof, if you will. You'll just be paying us separate invoices for the work, but we can collaborate together and make the process super smooth for you if you're interested. And I think we're both accepting new clients right now. So we'll just throw that out there if you're looking for a professional. But today we are going to talk just a little more practically about what you personally can do to help get your books ready if you're not using a bookkeeper yet, or if you're using one and want to just make sure that they're doing all the right things. So I'll kind of let you dive in wherever you want to start with just best practices for having your books ready at tax time and making life less stressful for everyone involved.
Thing is that you're including all of the relevant information, whether you're using a software like QuickBooks or spreadsheets, just making sure that you're looking at all of the accounts that you have, all the credit cards that you have, you're not forgetting any. You really want to keep business expenses and personal expenses separate. If you are using a software like QuickBooks, making sure that your accounts get reconciled so that you can verify the accuracy of the information that's in there. Those are really the big pieces.
And for those people who might not know what it means to reconcile your accounts, can you describe what that process looks like?
Reconciling is actually probably the number one thing that is not done when I get cleanup clients. And that's totally okay because it's not something that people who don't have an accounting background think about. But essentially, each month when you get your bank statement, you take that statement and you go into QuickBooks or Xero or whatever you're using, and you just go line by line and confirm that all of those transactions are in there and accurate, and that there's not any extras or duplicates that might be reflected because those numbers will throw off your reports.
Nice. Thank you for that. Yes, I see that oftentimes myself too. People are working in QuickBooks and they're categorizing their transactions regularly as the bank pulls them in, but they're not ever going in and doing that reconciliation piece, which can be really important in catching errors. I've had clients that have had their income duplicated in their books and it didn't even realize it. So they would have paid tax on double their income if we hadn't noticed that during the tax prep process and gotten it fixed. So
Yeah, that's
definitely.
actually one of the biggest issues that I come across is typically where that happens is if the deposits aren't getting matched up to the payments. They're sitting in undeposited funds, but then you're accepting the bank fee transactions as well. So those payments get duplicated and your sales are double reflected. And that's not a pretty tax bill.
For someone who might not have any bookkeeping experience at all and is maybe just starting out in their business, do you have any recommendations for processes or tools to start when you're still really small but still stay organized?
There are some free softwares available. They vary in quality, but there are some free options. I know Wave is a free platform. There are upgrades for different features, but their base model is free. I also sell a formatted Excel spreadsheet. It essentially you copy and paste your business expenses and your business income, and it will generate a profit and loss report for you. And that way, without the subscription cost of QuickBooks or another service, you still get that reporting feature. And then softwares like QuickBooks and Xero, their base models are fairly inexpensive. I think QuickBooks, the simple start plan is about $35 a month. So it's fairly affordable. I do like to stray people away from the QuickBooks self-employed version. This version is really made for hobby businesses, and it allows you to separate business from personal expenses. You can't customize categories, you can't reconcile your accounts, and it's really just limited on what you're able to do. So unless you just have a really part-time business, it's not a great option.
If you're just keeping your expenses on a spreadsheet or in some system of your own, then you're probably not going to be doing that reconciliation step, because that really is matching the bank transactions to what's in your bookkeeping software. One thing that I notice a lot as a tax professional is missed deductions when you do things that way, because you might not be inputting everything on a regular basis. Maybe at the end of the year, you're scrambling and trying to gather all your receipts, and inevitably things get forgotten. So that is one benefit to using a bookkeeper and having good systems in place, is that you're tracking everything on a regular basis. And it also allows you to pull financial reports and see how your business is doing on a regular basis too, rather than not really knowing how things are going to shake out until tax time. Are there any other benefits that you can think of to using a professional versus doing it yourself?
And it's really just a time saver. I know people hesitate sometimes because of the cost, but if you look at it in terms of taxes that could be saved from avoiding errors and the time that you can utilize within your business on income generating activities, as opposed to Googling how you're supposed to categorize a transaction, it really pays for itself, especially if your business is a full-time business. It can be a real kind of time suck, for lack of a better word, if you're trying to learn on the fly and you have other business tasks that you need to get to.
Yep, I definitely agree with that. I actually turned my own bookkeeping over to Erin recently, because I figured I should finally take my own advice that I give to all of my clients and use a professional. Because one of the main things for me is just I'm not in the software regularly. I'm not in QuickBooks, so I'm not efficient at doing the things that I know how to do in my brain. I know how things need to be categorized and end up on the financial statements, but the nuts and bolts of making the entries takes me way more time than it takes you and your team. And that allows me to focus on the things that I enjoy more and the things that I'm good at that make me more money in my business. So ultimately, yes, it can be an investment at first and hard to dish out that money, but the end result is you're going to be more beneficial to your company by doing what you're good at and letting someone else handle the other stuff.
The sooner you get help if you need it, the better. The longer you go letting issues compile, the more you're going to spend on a cleanup. And so recognizing that maybe this isn't what I should be spending my time on sooner is definitely helpful too.
Can you walk me through your process of what you do this time of year as we're leading up to year end, and then the steps that you take before you would present the financial statements to me, for example, to prepare the tax return?
So at the end of every year, for clients that have been working with me for a while that aren't in the cleanup phase, I will typically go through and do a year-to-date review, make sure we haven't missed anything. Errors can happen sometimes. We'll do a 1099 vendor audit. So we'll make sure that all of the payees are listed in there. Those 1099 vendors are set up properly so that their payments generate on the reports and we're reporting those 1099s accurately. And then depending on how the business functions, sometimes I'll do an accounts receivable and accounts payable audit just to make sure that those are reflected properly, and really just tying up any loose ends that might slow down the tax process. And then also in January, we do manage W-2s and 1099s, the filing of them as well. So that kind of helps us prepare for just getting those done quickly. And for existing clients that have been with us for a while, we can usually get those done within the first week of January, which is really great to just get that off of your plate 3 weeks before they're actually due, just less things to worry about.
Sure. I wanted to mention that one thing that I think this isn't so important for small businesses that still report on a Schedule C, but if you have a business that's taxed as a partnership or a corporation, and you're having that entity return prepared, the balance sheet is really important. And it's also really important that once you finalize your books and prepare the tax return, you don't ever go back and change things that happened in a prior year. So that's something that can happen pretty easily if you're working in your own books because you're just not thinking about it. So let's say you had a check from the prior year that hadn't cleared and you discovered that it was lost and never going to clear. So you just go in and delete it out of there because you're not going to worry about it. Well, that changes your books for the prior year, and we've already prepared the tax return. So now when we go to prepare the next year's tax return, things aren't going to match and we're going to have to figure out why. And so if you are doing your own books, make sure that once you give your financial statements to your accountant and have the return prepared, that any other changes that need to happen in the current tax year and not in the prior year. And working with a bookkeeper can ensure that that happens. Usually I see accountants actually lock the books so that if the client is in there or someone else is working in there, they don't inadvertently do something that changes those prior year numbers.
Yeah, I'll usually close the prior period. There's an option where you can add a password so that there's no way that they can change them, but I usually just include pop-up so that they know, oh, maybe I shouldn't do this. But that is definitely a big thing. Another thing that I see often is people don't always ask their tax preparer for the journal entries. And so those don't usually get entered unless someone's prompted. So it's not something that business owners usually think about after a tax return is issued, but it's really nice to just have a second set of eyes that's like, hey, there's supposed to be an entry here.
That's a really good point. Depreciation is the main one that comes to mind because you're probably not depreciating your assets throughout the year. Big companies do that. They'll make entries monthly for depreciation, but all of my small business clients don't do that. So the depreciation gets taken on the tax return, and then to make it into your books so that the return and the books match, that entry has to be made as a journal entry the last day of the year so that it all matches. And sometimes there's other things that have to be moved around too with journal entries, but depreciation and amortization are the main ones that you don't know what those numbers are until the tax return gets completed. So thank you for bringing that up. That's an excellent point as well.
Those are the big ones for sure. And speaking of the balance sheet, I think it's probably the most underutilized report for business owners. And I see it very frequently where assets aren't recorded or liability accounts are maybe recorded as a loan instead of a credit card. So those things can impact a tax return for a corporation. A lot of times when someone takes out a loan, for example, for a vehicle, they'll put the liability, the loan in there, but they're not putting in the asset. So having a set of eyes in there that can recognize that something's missing is great.
That's a great point. And also when you're recording the payments every month, technically they should be being allocated partially to principal, partially to interest. Sometimes that's hard to do on a monthly basis, and I'll see clients just put it all to the asset, and then again at the end of the year you can do a journal entry for the interest expense so that you can deduct that and then make sure that the liability is matching what is actually owed to what you have showing in your books.
That's a great thing about reconciling monthly too, is on those loan statements, it usually breaks out which portion of a payment is principal and which is interest. So when you reconcile that account, it kind of forces you to put that interest expense in there.
Do you have any personal stories of people who have come to you with maybe a mess and were able to get things turned around and see their business be more successful because of that?
It happens pretty frequently when they've been ignoring their books for a while, and just having the ability to see their numbers and recognize what's happening in their finances in a day-to-day way instead of just at tax time is really helpful for planning and moving forward. I also offer fractional CFO advisory services. So a lot of times once things get cleaned up, people are looking at their numbers, they're like, well, what do I do now? So that's really a great time to move them into the CFO realm, and we can evaluate what those numbers mean and forecast and plan for the future and make some strategic decisions there. And I've seen a lot of businesses see real growth from that.
Nice. Do you have any other words of wisdom, maybe anything that you would tell your younger, less experienced business self starting out that could help people that are just starting out themselves right now?
Probably that you can't do everything. You don't have to be good at everything. You just have to know where to go for the things that you don't know how to do. And that was something that I had a hard time with myself. It took me a while to hire, an admin that could help me with my social media and the assistants that I hired. But once I did, and I realized I don't need to know everything. I don't need to manage everything on my own. it's kind of a game changer, I think.
And this is why we get along so well, Erin. We've been on the same path almost at the same timing, really, as far as hiring and growing. And that is one thing that I have struggled with too, but it is so freeing and really wonderful when you're able to let go of that control and realize that you can't be good at everything and you're better at what you hopefully love doing, because that's something else I'm passionate about, is like, let's find something that you love to do. I don't think anyone should have to work a job that they hate, but you can easily get roped into that as a business owner, because as you grow, all of a sudden you're responsible for everything and you can't do everything effectively. And so if you can start delegating and finding other professionals to help you succeed, you're going to be happier, your business is going to be healthier, and you're going to be more profitable, I believe. So
Yeah, and doing what you love is so important, and that's another reason to outsource some of the things is you open your business to do the thing that you love doing, not to do your bookkeeping usually, do your taxes. So it's a great thing.
well, for my clients that are watching, you've probably seen my notices that have gone out, but if not, I am finally enforcing a policy that I put in place a couple years ago that I do need my small business clients to use a bookkeeper. If you have an S corporation or a partnership, you need to be using a professional. So if you don't have one, or you have one that you don't feel like is adequate for your needs right now and you'd like an introduction, I'd be happy to introduce you to Erin. And I have a couple other local people that I collaborate with closely also. So we'd be happy to help you make that transition. If you are just brand new starting out, I hope that the advice that we gave you today is helpful. And I can still prepare your return if you fill out my self-employed worksheet or Erin's spreadsheet that she sells on her website, just certifying that your expenses are accurate, because I'm not going to have a set of books to go on. So you're basically going to total things yourself. And that works fine for really small businesses. But I do hope that you'll consider using a professional as you grow, because like we've talked about, it just makes your life more enjoyable while you're running your business. It'll make tax season so much less stressful. It'll take you out of the loop sometimes in having to go back and forth between people or dig for information yourself. If there's questions, I can just reach out to your bookkeeper directly and they can provide the information, and you can keep doing what you love, running your business. So thank you so much, Erin, for taking the time to talk today. And I appreciate your partnership with me and my clients, and I appreciate you and your wisdom. So thank you so much.
Thank you for having me. I appreciate you too.